You are now listening to the Perceptive Readers Podcast. Hello, Perceptive Reader. This is going to be an in-depth reading of 1 Samuel chapter 28, and it will actually be on my bookshelf, if you will, of my Dark to Light Academia library that's on the Poeartistry.online. What I'm going to do is actually read 1 Samuel chapter 28. And I'm going to read the whole chapter. And I hope you will pay close attention to who the persons were during this time. What was their position? What was their authority? Even what type of powers or arts, knowledge of the arts that they possessed, and how they were used. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and read 1 Samuel chapter 28. And then I'll just have a few brief comments afterwards for you to further meditate on. And remember, if you have saved this in your favorites, my light to dark, academia library, then I'm glad that you have. And so keep on keeping on. Let us begin. 1 Samuel chapter 28, verses 1 all the way to 25. That's 1 through 25. And this is from one of the very first translations in the New World Translation of reading. And this is a book that I'm holding in my hand, you see. A book that a Bible that I'm holding in my hand that, you know, back in those days you actually paid money for. And I imagine some people still do pay for their Bibles as well. You know, some are given out as charity, and then others you pay for. This is one that was actually paid for, but I don't think it's a translation that is even printed anymore, because, you know, they've made more modern English. All the same, this is the one that I am going to use for this reading. As I mentioned, it is my property. All right. And it came about in those days that the Philistines began to collect their camps for the army to make war against Israel. So Achish said to David, one second, let me get the correct. I told you, yeah, this is it. This is the correct chapter. Okay. So Achish said to David, "You undoubtedly know that it is with me that you should go out into the camp, you and your men." And that David said to Achish, "That is why you yourself know what your servant is to do." Accordingly, Achish said to David, "That is why, guardian of my head, I shall appoint you always." Now Samuel himself had died, and all Israel had proceeded to bewail him and bury him in Ramah, his own city. As for Saul, he had removed the spirit mediums and the professional foretellers of events from the land. Subsequently, the Philistines collected together and came and pitched camp in Shunem. So Saul collected all Israel together, and they pitched camp in Gilboa. Excuse me. We continue with verse 5. When Saul got to see the camp of the Philistines, he became afraid, and his heart began to tremble very much. Although Saul would inquire of Jehovah, Jehovah never answered him, either by dreams or by the Urim or by the prophets. Finally, Saul said to his servants, "Seek for me a woman who is a mistress of spirit mediumship, and I will go to her and consult her." Then his servant said to him, "Look, there is a woman who is a mistress of spirit mediumship in Endor." So Saul disguised himself and clothed himself with other garments and went, he and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. He now said, "Employ divination, please, for me by spirit mediumship, and bring up for me the one whom I shall designate to you." Let me pause for a second. Perceptive reader. Okay, let me return back, and we're going to begin with verse 9. However, the woman said to him, "Here you yourself well know what Saul did, how he cut off the spirit mediums and the professional foretellers of events from the land. Why then are you acting like a trapper against my soul to have me put to death?" Immediately Saul swore to her by Jehovah, saying, "As Jehovah is alive, guilt for error will not befall you in this matter." At this the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" To this he said, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she began crying out at the top of her voice. And the woman went on to say to Saul, "Why did you trick me when you yourself are Saul?" But the king said to her, "Do not be afraid, but what did you see?" And the woman went on to say to Saul, "A god I saw coming up out of the earth." At once he said to her, "What is his form?" To which she said, "It is an old man coming up, and he has himself covered with a sleeveless coat." At that, Saul recognized that it was Samuel, and he proceeded to bow low with his face to the earth and to prostrate himself. And Samuel began to say to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by having me brought up?" To this Saul said, "I am in very sore straits, as the Philistines are fighting against me, and God himself has departed from me, and has answered me no more, either by means of the prophets or by dreams, so that I am calling you to let me know what I should do." And Samuel went on to say, "Why then do you inquire of me, when Jehovah himself has departed from you and proves to be your adversary? And Jehovah will do for himself just as he spoke by means of me, and Jehovah will rip the kingdom away from your hand and give it to your fellow man David, as you did not obey the voice of Jehovah, and you did not execute his burning anger against Amalek. And that is why, that is why this is the thing that Jehovah will certainly do to you this day. And Jehovah will also give Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines. And tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Even the camp of Israel Jehovah will give into the hand of the Philistines. At that Jehovah quickly fell down. At that Saul quickly fell down his full length to the earth and became very much afraid because of Samuel's words. Also, there happened to be no power in him, because he had not eaten food the whole day and the whole night. The woman now came to Saul and saw that he had been greatly disturbed. So she said to him, "Here your maidservant has obeyed your voice." And I proceeded to put my soul in my palm and obey the words that you spoke to me. And now, please, you, in turn, obey the voice of your maidservant, and let me set before you a piece of bread, and you eat that power and you eat, that power may come to be in you because you will go on your way. But he refused and said, I am not going to eat. However, his servants and also the woman kept urging him. Finally, he obeyed their voice and rose up from the earth and sat on the couch. Now the woman had a fattened calf in the house, so she quickly sacrificed it and took flour and kneaded dough and baked it into unfermented cakes. Verse 25. Then she served them to Saul and his servants, and they ate. After that, they rose up and went away during that night. And that concludes 1 Samuel chapter 28, verses 1 through 25. And the point is this. You notice this was King Saul, who had actually did more than pick a fight with David, who was someone agreeable to God's heart. And see, Saul was originally placed as the first king, before David. And then Saul actually at times, because of whether it's fear of man or some other feeling inadequate for the job or the task, just started doing certain things that even Jehovah God told him not to do, and he did them anyway, or he didn't do what Jehovah God told him to do. And so it finally got to the point where those battles of him constantly trying to kill David was coming to a head. And here it is. He was no longer receiving the spirit or light of God to know what to do. I'm going to certainly say understand what to do. And so then he actually started inquiring spiritually, in this instance, for a witch of Endor to call up somebody who was already dead. Something that is already mentioned, and he knew it from the law, that would be detestable to Jehovah God for him to do. And yet he did it. Goes to show you he was really losing his mind. And if you notice, overall, they still had a dialogue, if you will, a conversation, if you will, an exchange of goods and services between this witch and this king here. Now, the problem came in again where it's, because every day we run into certain people that have the same type of beliefs as the witch of Endor. But this just goes to show that there are even certain services that people can offer that, as the knowledge of God enlightens you further, there are certain services that you just would no longer, need or request for yourself. Okay? So anyway, this is just one of those reading again, a special reading, I would say, that's going on the James Poeartistry website in the Dark to Light Academia Library. Take care.